Today we have Eckhard Schwenner, one of the top experts, to talk about IP in healthcare industry. Thank you for accepting our invitation, Eckhard, and for sharing your insights on IP. And I would like to start by asking you, what is the importance of IP in healthcare industry?
I think the IP, intellectual property, is of utmost importance for several reasons. One is that is actually defining the true value of a company. And why is that? Because in healthcare, you have very long development times, which go up to 20 years. And if you do not have a protection for what you are developing, then you have almost no chance to really recoup the high investments, which you typically do into such type of development, and the investment goes up to $1 billion or more for a typical pharmaceutical product. So it's an absolute need to protect your company from other people using your same invention.
And so, but how are companies in healthcare industry protecting their IP?
Well, first of all, you start with a basic patent, and then going forward within a research program, you are actually developing a portfolio which is basing the follow-on patents on your basic patent. And the most strong patent protection you get from a product patent, where you have a chemical entity which you can define, which nobody else had done before, and you actually as a company have the right to develop and produce it. That is the strongest patent. And along with that, there are patent families where you have structural variation and put down a number of other patents. And you define structure-activity relationships and define where is the best activity and why. And the nature of a patent is that it needs to be new, it needs to be inventive, and it needs to be defining a product which can be put to industrial use.
And what about the timelines and how the whole process unfolds? So if a company wants to file for a patent, what is happening next?
Well, first of all, you go in Europe for a national application first. Then you have a year to think about whether that is the final patent. You get feedback from the patent office, and then you hopefully get it granted. And then you can go for a PCT application, which is giving you the priority to patent it worldwide. And then actually, after 18 months, you must decide in which countries you really want to nationalize it. And that's the time, the time span which you typically have in front of you.
Do you have an idea of how much it would cost to
file
for a patent?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, to file
and to extend it, let's say, at least into the major markets.
Yeah. So to file a patent is not so costly. It's several thousand euros. That is not an issue typically, to give you the priority right and the right to protection for your invention. But then it continues with the PCT application. Again, is also not so costly, several thousand euros again. But the real costs start when you define the global countries and the nationalization process. And then after that, once you have decided, I want to go to United States, to India, and to China, for instance, then 5 years after, you really have to keep up the patent. You have to give arguments to the national countries and say, hey, I want to keep it either in full or I want to reduce the claim. And then after you define it, you basically have to put down cost. And over the whole lifetime of a patent, which typically is 20 years, if you go for global filing, you probably pay up to $500,000.
Yeah, and there's something that I also, I'm a bit, I don't know, maybe puzzled is, you told about long timelines for developing a product in healthcare.
Yeah.
And then the patent is only valid for 20 years. I mean,
yeah.
What is then the right moment for filing.
Yeah.
And is there enough time then for a company to get return on this investment?
Well, that's a very good question, and that is what most people don't appreciate. Again, I say it again, to get to market successfully with a product takes about €1 billion or more. And if you do not have time left to really recoup revenues where you are protected, then that poses a severe problem. And because that is the case, as I talked about before, you have to put down follow-up patents, which are actually covering some certain specific aspects of, or put down patent family patents further on, which are actually then giving you a longer period of protection. You can also protect your product by, bringing it to the market, let's say, with a 2 times per day or 3 times per day application. And then once you have a long-term formulation, which you only need 1 time a day, then you have new protection again.
So imagining that I have fully protected my products with a patent or a patent portfolio, should I understand that I'm fully protected then, that I can commercialize my product?
That's a good question again, because if you take, for instance, a point-of-care diagnostics situation where you develop a new point-of-care diagnostics device which enables people to be much quicker in their diagnosis for a certain blood parameter, for instance, then you can patent that, and that's perfectly fine. You have new detection technology which nobody else applied before, so that's great. But then what you need to do in order to put certain assays on, you need to look whether the assays which you are trying to put on and the antibodies which you need for those assays, whether they fall into the rights of other companies. Oh. And it may well be that there is, for instance, in case of BNP, when that B-type natriuretic peptide, a heart insufficiency parameter, when we actually wanted to put that on our device, we clearly had to pay royalties to the company, which were quite extensive. But so you need to check whether, even though you have a patent, whether you are still depending on somebody else in order to market your product.
Okay, so, well, I think we could have much more time, or could use more time to go further into details, but I think these initial thoughts and your insights were really helpful for us to understand how healthcare industry is protecting products and what's the importance of IP in healthcare. Thank you very much, Eckhard.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here and be able, hopefully, to answer your questions.